Well, the silly season is over. The election has come and gone, and tonight we're going to talk to a group of people who are pleased, let's say, with the results. So why don't we start with introductions?
Ed Bertarelli, chairman of the Milford Republican Town Committee and former chairman of the treasurer of the Mass Republican Party.
Chris Moore, a member of the FinCom.
So Ed, here's your chance.
Well, if we had two words to describe the last few months, it would be holy cow. I think we've said on every show that we've been on since this primary season started, basically fasten your seatbelts or on a roller coaster, because the unexpected became the expected. The expected became the defunct. You went on the Republican side from, 16 candidates through a whole process of ups and downs and whatever, an amazing process, which I think as a political insider for doing this for 50 years, that's 50 people. I couldn't see the forest for the trees, because there was a process going on in front of us that we couldn't detect because we were so far into the process. And on the Democratic side, I think you saw sort of the exact opposite, because people always said the Republican Party had always groomed a person to succeed. In other words, the person who lost the presidency or lost the thing would be renominated in order, short order. In other words, Bob Dole, John McCain, Mitt Romney, so on. The Democrats followed that lead and basically set up a process where Bernie was behind the 8 ball from the beginning, even though he was very popular. The delegates were stacked with Democratic side. The convention was stacked with super delegates. Then we find out, care of the WikiLeaks, that it was even more of a process that was stacked and fixed in favor of Hillary. And I think our candidate's message of crooked Hillary, which he threw out, resonated on that level, and it resonated on another level. We could talk about the Clinton Foundation and the emails, but let's go back to the process that was involved. So I think you saw for a lot of millennials, young people come out, that they had come out to vote for Bernie if they were more liberal, and probably some other Republican candidates if they were more conservative, and they were both sort of disillusioned. But again, we go back to holy cow, is that here we are with a president-elect Donald Trump. And I guess you'd have to start by saying that probably Trump was the only one of the candidates who could have brought the battle directly to Hillary and call her crooked Hillary, because most Republicans would have deferred in a genteel style to running on issues. He detected that you had to go, as he did with Jeb Bush in the beginning, you go right for the jugular and call it exactly what it is. And I think that resonated with a lot of the public, and her fumbling and reactions to it resonated again as well. She was down about, I believe, 5 million votes from Barack Obama's total in the country, and Trump was around the same or a slight drop off. So it showed a lot of people stayed home, didn't vote, and she didn't motivate a lot of her coalition.
But Ed, if a moderate, a Rand Paul, even a Jeb Bush had run against her, do you think it would have been this tight?
Well, Rand Paul is more an issues candidate. Jeb Bush would have been a generalist. I think that's Trump's great advantage, that he was a generalist. On some issues he was moderate. On some he was pretty far out there. Others he was probably more on the Union Democrat side. He's a candidate who is not easily defined as a person. One of his first things he's putting forward is a massive transit infrastructure bill, which Republicans would tend to shy away from because of the cost involved.
That's been a Democratic dream.
Yes,
absolutely, and he comes out with a $1 trillion plan right off the bat as one of his first initiatives.
And we see from the CNNs of the world, the Clinton Network News of the world.
It'd be nice.
Well, their coverage was disgraceful of him in the primary process, and as it was the New York Times.
As opposed to somebody neutral like the New York Times?
Yes, again, they even had to apologize to their readers, sort of apologize. to their readers for their
But, you know,
coverage.
look at their readers. I mean, I read the Times for their investigative reporting, because I don't get the world view in any other paper.
Yeah.
But even the Times had to admit that their complaints are at record highs about how they're presenting
Well,
the local, local being the United States.
Again, the WikiLeaks, which it's amazing to think that we have to rely not on the FBI or our own intelligence service. We had to rely on Julian Assange to expose the fact that many media outlets, including Politico, CNN, and the Times, referred their stories to the Clinton
See,
campaign.
now that amazes me, why any investigative reporter would ask
Why?
for you,
Why?
To say, hey, would you look this over and tweak it for me?
Well, I mean, the point is that the stories are written hand in glove with the Hillary campaign. I mean, they weren't sending it for approval, let's write a tougher story. They were saying, do you like this story? Well, that violates the whole principles of journalistic ethics. That's amazing. And when the public saw that, it clicked in people's minds. Aha, we saw this again. But, I'm sure we're going to hear from the liberal or the radical establishment. We already heard, the tone, uneducated white voters, which is very offensive to anyone who comes from towns like Milford or anywhere else where we had tons of people who couldn't afford to go to school because of the Depression and other things. But it's interesting that these...
But wait a minute, Ed, let's take that up. What does that imply?
Well,
that people like my father
yes.
weren't intelligent enough to make a vote?
Yeah,
because he didn't go to school?
That's exactly what it means when they use that terminology.
Yeah, and it would be interesting if someone dared say uneducated black voter or Hispanic voter or Asian voter. They'd be met with a...
They become an ist.
They'd become, and they'd also be called racist or
That's
whatever.
what I'm saying, it's a racist, a sexist.
Yes, yes.
All of a sudden, you're focused on a label that you're an ist of something.
You've heard the whole thing, though. Xenophobic, homophobic, this and that.
Oh, when I became a deplorable?
You're deplorable. Yeah. And now that goes to the classic one. But another issue is the thing that these elites don't have a problem with, or they can't even understand, is a town like Youngstown, Ohio, or the whole belt in Ohio and a huge section of Wisconsin. But just take Youngstown. It voted twice for Obama. So these, quote, uneducated white voters who would be, according to the elites, not as racially tolerant, voted twice for an self-described African-American president in pretty significant numbers, but switched to Trump. So it shows you.
And I think that illustrates a very profound thing that we saw in this election, is that everyone always knew that Hillary was going to be the heir apparent in the Democratic Party,
yes.
that she was going to do well in the race even a week before, 24 hours before the election. It was a shoo-in that she was going to win, okay? It is my firm belief that if anyone except for Hillary Clinton had run against Donald Trump, they would have beaten him.
I agree.
There's no, and to me, when you think that they always looked at her as their best chance to win, their crowning achievement would be to get her into the presidency, first woman president, a legacy of the Clintons and everything else, and to sit there, and I think a lot of people agree with me, and you even did immediately, that if anyone but her had run against him,
but again,
they would have won. And it's very paradoxical
on
how that worked.
I would not vote for Hillary Clinton only because she's a woman.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't not vote for her because she's a woman.
Well,
to me, it's like Barack Obama. I would have never voted for him only because he was a minority. But it doesn't rule him out either.
And that's what I hate when that argument comes, is that they have people come out and vote for her because she's a woman. I don't like that. Come out and vote for the candidate because they're the best candidate. I don't ever go out and vote for someone because they're Hispanic, or I vote for someone because they're African American, or because they're female. I certainly don't go out and say I'm voting for this president because he's a man.
Well,
And then unfortunately, when that is your base and that's who you're trying to go to, is vote for her because she's a woman. Well, to me, as soon as you say that, you lose a lot of credibility with me. You should be voting for someone who's the best person for the job, not voting for someone because...
Regardless of sex, race, whatever.
Anything,
in
religion,
your opinion,
anything.
yes. No, but the thing comes down also to is that that was thrown out in a sort of a way that was sort of typical of the Democratic Party, the Democrat Party, in the sense that they're appealing to sections of a population, okay? And it's interesting that our liberal friends and the liberals on your show and whatever, when Bernie was running, a number of them with Bernie Sanders, okay? So the minute Bernie was denied the nomination, and now we figure out in a good way
I think
how.
once the superdelegate information came out, I think that was a huge turn in that.
Now, wait a minute. Let me just. Anybody who looks and says, we're going to give our favorite a 20, 30% advantage from the get-go.
Yep.
At that point alone.
But the thing is, though, as we said in a show in the process, the media immediately, the CNNs and the mainstream media, remember there's probably only one or two outlets, Fox and maybe one or two others, who sort of report.
Oh, God bless you, Ed.
But let me.
I watch Fox
Let me
religiously.
finish.
I watch CNN, and somewhere in the middle is what I
yes,
believe.
but the problem is, no, wait a minute. You have one outlet that has one point of view and 8 or 9 outlets that have another point of view. End of story. CBS, ABC, NBC are basically doing the same issue. But what I want to point out is, yeah, the superdelegates were an issue, but the media didn't portray it. What really happened was when WikiLeaks came out and the emails indicated how they were setting Bernie up from within inside, they're somewhat saying some of the Democratic staffers did it, but I think we're getting into the, what do you call it, the nitty gritty,
Yeah.
But question comes down to his likability. And Hillary has always had an issue with her ratings for trustworthiness. As you've said on the show, the Clintons have had a pattern of thinking that rules apply to everyone else but them. And that was shown again through a process. And then you've got the issue of how Chris said about where we said at the beginning that Republicans had always been accused of channeling a favorite candidate, and now we have here the Democrats channeling. And then I think recreating reality. There's a story that I heard I was just in the West Coast about Bill Clinton and Hillary having this screaming match on the phone about Bill had detected a long while that the Bubba vote, which was the vote that he got, which would be the working class white Americans, weren't being paid attention to, and the Clinton staffers said, Bill's from the past. In other words, Bill's a voice from the past, it's not accurate. Well, unfortunately, Bill Clinton's political instincts were right on.
But there was a difference, Ed, when Bill Clinton, not the Bill Clinton of today, but the Bill Clinton, the candidate, when you listen to him, he was smooth.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You liked him.
But this is what I think the point is that he was trying to point out was he's pointing out to her campaign, which spent double what Donald Trump spent at least, in roughly 900 million dollars basically in the campaign. I think he was trying to point out to her late in the campaign that you're going in the wrong direction. Her staffer said that's a voice from the past, Bill's a voice from the past, and this is how he reacted.
But the last WikiLeaks, do you really think it changed a lot?
Which was what? What were the last ones?
The last week of WikiLeaks.
Well, there was
2 weeks.
There was a barrage of them, though.
Yeah, and
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
I think they
softened her
changed
up.
some people. But honestly, I really feel that people were going to vote the way they were going to vote for a while. And the reason why I say that is that I just think that the polling numbers just were not accurately reflected. And then we saw it that night. And you saw the looks on their faces when pollsters are basically melting in their chairs. Because I think one of the things is that when someone calls your house or someone gets you when you're walking out of a polling station, did you vote for Trump? There's a lot of people who will outright lie. They were embarrassed to say they voted for Trump. They were embarrassed to answer a phone and say, I agree with some of the things you agree with.
But why is that, though?
Well, we'll talk about that. But the point is, that's what they did. So going up to the election, all in the Rust Belt, as you mentioned, which is what turned the election, was the Rust Belt. When they were polled, they just wouldn't want to say that on the phone or at exit polling or anything else.
It was even.
So I think it was going to go the way it did. I think that the WikiLeaks certainly softened it, as Ed said. But I really think people, they just didn't want to say they were going to do it, and then they showed it when they went to the booth.
I'm also wondering, we kept hearing throughout the campaign that there was an oversampling of friendly people. So even if people were talking straight, if you're oversampling 10% more liberal or 5% more liberal.
Well, but again, the media is drawn. The campaign donations for federal employees in Washington were 27-1 for
Yeah,
Hillary
well, I got a
Clinton
kick
versus
out of
Donald Trump.
93% of the
Media. Okay. So,
donated to
but
Hillary's
again,
campaign.
so now, but what you're doing is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the 93% of the media who voted for Hillary are going out and socializing afterwards, since even though you work for competing, you're all from the same milieu, you're all from the same venue, so you're out. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're not changing anyone's mind.
Now, Ed, at the end of the day, when Barack Obama won, I was never an Obama supporter. I never voted for him. But the day he became my president, I had to hope he would be successful. Because it's like, I'm on the rowboat, I'm going to drill holes in my side of the rowboat, we all go down.
Yep.
I don't understand this. Trump is going to be our president. Hoping that he fails
Wow.
is kind of self-defeating, is it not?
It's the attitude of the liberal media and the liberal elites is typical. The terms, when you throw out the terms to opponents, racist, homophobic, deplorables, which is something everyone could understand, you understand why a lot of Trump supporters basically said, are you kidding? I'm going to answer a question from someone from the media about who I'm voting for. I'm voting for the person I want to vote for. And beside the Rust Belt, you have to look at huge swaths of upstate New York, vast parts of Pennsylvania, Ohio, the South, West Virginia.
But the impenetrable blue wall all of a sudden
Yeah, but
became
there
Swiss
wasn't.
cheese.
There wasn't. The point is that was a fake because it relied on energizing inner city turnout. Now, the other thing that really got me was people got up and made remarks about Donald Trump's behavior and whatever. Yet in the campaign we had all sorts of the beautiful people, the singers, the entertainment industry, whatever, getting up at rallies and really use a sort of deplorable language. I'll take a term out to ask people to vote for Hillary.
But Ed,
But Ed, what?
if I asked you to give me an opinion on a gene sequence, yeah, exactly, that face, your credibility would be zero with me. When a singer can be a great singer, gets up and says, you should vote for a candidate because I'm telling
Barbra
you to.
Streisand, yes.
I'm saying, wait a minute, you're a singer. Why?
But you're saying that, but they were throwing everything at every gamut
Well,
they could at the public.
I agree, and you say that, but I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why do you think movie stars they do commercials?
Yeah.
They sell you a product. They don't know anything about cars,
yeah.
but Matthew McConaughey can sell you a Cadillac. You know what I mean? Fame sells, and on the other end, I think that's one of the reasons that Donald Trump made it through. People watch The Apprentice, they see him on Access Hollywood, they see all this
But
other
you got a
things.
rap star whose lyrics are not very complimentary towards women,
There's no question.
right? Saying that he's a pro-woman candidate, and I'm like,
Well,
okay.
Yeah,
that will be like Hillary Clinton talking about Donald Trump and women, given the background of what went on with her husband. Now, the argument.
okay,
wait a minute.
Ed.
Wait, hold on. The argument was that she was not responsible for her husband's behavior.
Wait a minute. I have a hard time blaming Hillary
No one's blaming
for
Hillary.
Bill.
No
What I
one's
don't
blaming
have,
Hillary.
What I do have a hard time with her is that she attacked the women.
Yes, exactly.
You know, when I think of Monica Lewinsky, and I say anybody in any company I've ever been at that's a senior executive, I don't care if the intern pleaded with you to have a long discussion. You would be terminated.
Yep.
You would be prosecuted. End of story.
Yeah.
In the old words, who's the adult?
Yeah.
So to have her call a young intern a kook or whatever,
Yeah.
that I have a hard time with.
Yes, exactly.
Not that Bill had the affair. That's none of my business when I'm evaluating her.
That's the
Yes.
point. But
But-
again, it's another nuance of her that may raise questions about her
Judgment.
judgment and her appealing to women as a woman's candidate.
Well,
I don't think her judgment is in question anymore, and I think it was proved in the election.
But
I don't think that that's in
And
question
let's
anymore.
face it, let's
People
not speak
know
ill
what
of the dead.
Yeah,
She's gone.
exactly.
It's a
Well,
dead issue.
exactly.
But to wrap this up and maybe go to the cabinet is that the thing that the American public showed was that two dynasties are over, the Clintons and the Bushes, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that, I think, ends it. The question comes down to now, as you said, is the media and so on are praying, it seems. We saw CNN today braying about Trump's empire and what he'd have to do with it, like that Donald Trump would take advice from CNN would be hilarious, given the coverage of him. But the question is, he's announced, what, 3 or 4 cabinet picks so far. They seem to be solid.
Okay, before we get there, let me
Yeah.
ask a question.
Yeah.
What's your take on the fact that Donald Trump went to YouTube? Instead of doing a press conference, his first major announcement here was he went out to the American public direct with a 2-minute YouTube.
Well,
Perfect.
and that's what he's trying to get around all the bias, and that's why he was doing. That's why he does his tweeting. That's why he wants to remove the filter, which is most broadcasting companies that they filter it. So I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah, and let's put it in a little context. Barack Obama has done a record low number of White House press conferences in his presidency, and Hillary Clinton was remarkable in how few
270 days.
how few press interviews she did.
now,
People are bypassing the
Isn't
press.
this kind of strategically, in my mind, a brilliant move? Because when I think of the millennials, I think of my daughters.
Yes.
They don't tune into the
Yeah.
6 o'clock news.
That's
But the YouTube, the tweets, the twacks, the twang, all the little,
Yep.
social media derivatives that came out of it, boy, they relate to that. So I can see them relating more to a 2-minute Donald Trump YouTube.
There's no question.
Hey, you see it, and you've seen it with every president, and he's no different. But you already see he's had a 9-point bump. Right after the election, all of a sudden, 9% of Americans don't all of a sudden like you. You know what I mean? It's just that's the bump that every president-elect gets.
Does anyone remember the Boston Globe?
People start to get on board.
Oh, the whole page of the day
whole-
after
the whole- no,
Clinton
the- yeah,
becomes
yeah,
president.
Trump becomes president.
I'm sorry.
The
was Trump-
stormtroopers are
yes.
ruling or whatever. So the response from the world markets was, the dollar's never been higher. The stock market hit 19,000 today. Is that 19,000, ladies
Yep.
and gentlemen? So, again, it's interesting to hear the talking class
Yeah.
been proving wrong, and wrong again, and re-wrong. So,
There's no question, and that's why when the Dow futures were down 800 points and they had to stop trading the night of the election, and people are like, that's because he's going to destroy the world. People don't understand the way the market goes, in that the market gets scared by uncertainty.
Uncertainty is the
And
biggest
that's
problem.
the biggest. They don't care whether it was one or the other. They really didn't. This was just something that they didn't see,
now- Yeah,
but
and
they
that's
see-
why it did it. And then the market opened. What did the market
Do you
do? And
think
what has it done every day
Trump
since?
now is going to start dealing with reality?
Well-
I mean, forget a lot of the stuff that we're going to build the wall.
Yeah.
And everybody assumed it was bricks and mortar.
Yep.
So now he's back. I'm going to do away with all of Obamacare.
I mean, he's already backing. He's already
Well,
backed off
well,
on that.
yeah,
He's
but
already
let-
backing off on
Yeah,
prosecuting
but
Hillary.
let's say back off is a term.
Yeah.
That's
But he's easing his
See-
stance. How
see-
about that?
See, what happens is when you're faced with the media, we become apologetic because this tone is set. As I said, for probably every show, when a Republican gets asked, when you stop beating your dog, and when a Democrat gets asked, what's your favorite color, you figured out in a press conference that there's a certain nuance involved. Just the fact that Donald Trump got elected president will change. Imagine being the men and women in the law and order, the firemen, policemen, first responders, border patrol, Coast Guard, our uniformed people, what they've dealt with on the borders. Here you are on the borders of the Mexican-U.S. border, and your life's on the line, and you know in Washington that you're going to have no support.
Here's something that's bugging
Simple.
me. In the last few days, we saw 5 of our finest.
Yep.
Okay, 5 policemen ambushed. But I don't hear either party screaming.
Wait a minute. What do you mean screaming?
When 2 or 3 civilians were shot by a policeman, it seemed like the administration went way out of their
Well,
way.
I wouldn't say either party. The fact was, the Democrats, okay, Hillary and the president, have basically been working in a way that the first people they seem to respond to are the Black Lives Matter folks. Now, who's ever responsible or the culture or the attitude that has made killing and murdering and executing policemen and our first responders more common, we'll leave that where it could go for another show. But the fact is that when as a candidate, Hillary didn't meet with a lot of families of fallen officers, but was immediately at Black Lives Matter rally, sends a message, pretty clear message to most people in law enforcement what's going on.
Where her side is.
Yeah.
There's no question.
What has Trump done in the last week to talk about?
Well, he's the president-elect, and the point is, I mean, what's the president doing?
Yeah.
Whole different, again, Ed, I agree, because
In
the
every
president is the one that should be
Well,
out there in my mind.
let's ask the public
But-
right now. Let's ask the public on as we're filming this. Trump has been in what, 2 weeks?
He hasn't been
president-elect?
in, he's been elect. He's not even in
okay,
yet.
but since he got elected, the night he got elected, there have been riots. Innocent people have had their property destroyed. People have been shot at, quote, demonstrations to protest Trump. What has Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton said directly to those people who are rioting? Have they said, please stop it if you're a supporter of mine? The President of the United States, to my knowledge, has not said that. He's been very...
And Ed, to your point,
Yeah.
if when Barack Obama had won, people led these kind of protests, they'd get an ist after them.
Oh, there's no
Yes.
question. And you actually have people supporting. They're telling celebrities and other people, telling people, go out there and riot, destroy personal property, stop business districts from being able
Oh,
to conduct
goodness.
business, put the policemen and our first responders in harm's way because, hey, demonstrations are fine. This country's been founded on the demonstration of many issues.
I'm absolutely
but
okay
this is
with demonstrations.
yes.
This isn't a demonstration.
but they're not. That's what
When
my
you're
issue
shutting
with it
down
is.
roads, I
Well-
sit there and say, what happens if an ambulance has to get through?
Yep.
You're putting people at risk. And the fact that 5 people, were ambushed.
Yeah.
Executed.
Or 4.
You see
or
people
3,
getting pulled out of-
3
No, they saw the guy in Philadelphia. He got pulled right out of his car. Pulled out of his car at a stop sign because he had a Trump sticker on. They pulled him out and beat him.
So now,
Horrifying.
is Trump going to become the practical president that some hope for?
Well, again, I think the proof's in the pudding, and the people that he's picked for his cabinet so far, Jeff Sessions, senator from Alabama, solid choice as Attorney General. The director of the CIA, Congressman Pompeo, brilliant man who went to, I think, first in his class at West Point, then went to Harvard Business School. These are pros who understand what terrorism is.
Now, Sessions, they're trying to drag up.
Well, but like, let's just go through. You can.
Here was one that had me,
Yeah.
Secretary of Education.
Yeah.
They start floating a name and then say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to make them urban and housing development.
Well, there are positions in the cabinet that are, in a way, basically honorary positions. They don't really matter.
No, but is that not a practical move on Trump's part when you sit there and say, because you're an MD, what do you know? Because I got home and my daughter said, what does he know about education?
Who?
Who is he nominating?
No, he's not nominating anyone, is he?
Well, he hasn't nominated anybody yet,
no,
but you start talking about the names.
They're floating, but again, floating names is an art in itself.
Yeah.
It's done all the time. There's some key things that we have to get done, and one is the Veterans Affairs Commissioner.
Yes.
And that Scott Brown has
Scott
been mentioned,
Brown.
but that department needs to be thoroughly destroyed and rebuilt from the beginning. Right now they've been glancing on it or whatever.
That was one issue that really weighed on her, and I don't think it didn't bring her down, that's for sure. But that was one of the issues, and we talked about it on several shows, that people who have fought and died for this country and people who have family members looked at what was happening to our veterans.
Blow it
and the
up and
services.
rebuild it.
So I totally
because
agree
it's
with you.
disgraceful.
Yep.
And that's what, when we're talking about theory and we're talking about human nature.
But again, when I looked at Carlson, they're bringing him up saying he could be head of education.
Oh, fine.
Well, he
Yeah.
doesn't know anything about it. So then he got moved. To me, that was a good sign that maybe Trump, yes.
But again, there are positions in the cabinet. It doesn't really matter who the Secretary of Education is. It doesn't really matter. These are Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. These are positions where the undersecretaries or whatever, you're the sort of figurehead of that agency. Then there are things like the Attorney General, Director of
Yes,
Homeland
absolutely.
Security,
Yep.
Secretary of Defense.
But wait a minute, Ed.
They are
Ed,
important.
you say that, but the Attorney General of the United States.
Very important. Look
Yeah.
at what
Meeting with a person who their department may investigate.
yes.
I'm sorry, I don't look at that person as a figurehead.
No.
No, I didn't say, no, I'm saying exactly the opposite.
Oh, that's one of the important ones.
I'm saying that the key things like defense, homeland security,
yes.
these are vital in the government funds.
'Cause
There are
to me,
honorary ones.
The incumbent probably isn't getting a lot of consideration for reemployment here.
No, I agree. Now, and to Ed's point, I think in those certain instances, you're looking for someone with a specialized talent. That's like saying the CEO of Exxon could never go be the CEO of Staples. Why? He doesn't know anything about office products. You can, because like you had mentioned, I'm not sorry, the undersecretaries who specialize in this.
Yeah.
When you're in that position, you're more of a manager. Yes, of course, you have to have, a good knowledge of it, but you don't need to be an expert in education. You need to hire experts.
So Ben Carlson,
Just like a
in a HUD,
just like
I'll agree with
a
you.
president. A president
again.
hires he's going to
Not
pick his.
even an issue.
But like a president picks his attorney general, it doesn't mean he knows everything about the law.
Well,
Now, how do you deal with, you bring somebody up to be the highest law enforcement person in the country, and somebody says, 30 years ago,
yeah. Well,
they made a mistake.
how about 30 years ago, or now 50 years ago, the Senate Majority and Minority Leader, Robert Byrd from West Virginia, was a Ku Klux Klan member.
And
Well,
That's what I'm asking.
my question was,
Do we believe
No.
that people can change?
of-
And do we give them the benefit of the doubt? Because this is also the guy who prosecuted and got the death penalty for the head of the KKK.
I
And-
understand, but the point is, again, we have to look at the context of when an issue becomes an issue. And it becomes an issue when a Republican is doing something, but not when a Democrat was. I raised the issue to you before. How many people in America knew that the Senate Majority and Minority Leader, Harry Reid, was a Mormon? Yet, when Mitt Romney ran for president, it became a big issue that he was a Mormon. So what I'm saying is there's a double standard here, and it goes through almost everything that we deal with from the media, and even the context of how we ask questions. I think, though, the interesting thing about Trump is the Republicans have always had the MO, and we see it, of being in favor of corporate, in corporate America. We know at least now that the tech world is clearly in favor of the Democrats because of their donations that were given overwhelmingly to the Democratic Party and hit Clinton and the committees. But Republicans have always said they're the MO of, tightwads about some things and in favor of corporate things. But Trump threw that right out the beginning with his massive idea of doing an infrastructure bill, which we need to rebuild the highways and bridges and
But
things
didn't
of
we
America.
try that with the last guy? Wasn't that the first thing that Obama shovel-ready?
Yeah, but wait a minute.
$1 trillion.
But he faced a Republican Congress that didn't trust the person proposing it.
Yeah.
This is a little different because now you have a Republican Senate, a Republican House.
No, but I guess my point was, we tried that, and it didn't work. Why will it work this time?
I think it was the person proposing it. Yeah. That there was a basic distrust of the person just proposing it and the context of how he wanted to spend the money.
See, I remember something about 15% of the money actually got spent on infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then now there's another key one, which was raised, and we wouldn't hear it from the left-wing media, which is basically what percentage of the media would you say is left-wing? 80%, maybe 75%? I mean, the big papers, whatever. The one that was very important for a lot of Republicans and a lot of conservative people around the country was the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And it became clear when you saw that the Republicans retained the Senate, and this is why Reince Priebus is going to be Trump's
Staff.
chief of staff. Chief of staff, which is one of the most important positions in the United States government. Andy Card held it, who a lot
No,
of us
he's
knew
really,
from
I
Massachusetts.
mean, if you look at it, I look at him as number 2.
Oh, absolutely.
Vice president, technically,
there's a-
but not
there's-
really.
But again, let's get to Pence after this. But there's a question about it: is that the Republican Party, Previs, for who's I believe Wisconsin, managed 16 candidates in a race, which is how do you win with that?
They had to have 2 nights of debates.
Exactly. And you had
No, it's herding cats. And,
Yeah,
you know, it's
yeah.
herding
no
cats.
question.
And on the other hand, you find, just to throw this little one out for our friends, is that you found poor Bernie and Hillary going in debates where Hillary knew some of the questions in advance. So let's get back to Previs. So he ran with the Republican Party a campaign designed to retain the Senate majority.
Yep.
And the way they did it was they went out and sent mailers to people, what about the Supreme Court? It may well be that Hillary might win, and in the way they play, the Democrats played into this because they basically guaranteed a Hillary win
Yeah.
and said, okay, what are we going to do about the Supreme Court? And that tip that I've heard from my Republican friends in different states, Wisconsin, whatever, was a key issue. Do we really want to give Hillary a new Supreme Court? So now,
Well, that's 3 decades.
okay, now we
Now, if you
found,
think about it, we elected somebody who, 4 years, 8 years max. But the real legacy
Of
is
course.
you could be putting somebody in for 20, 30 years.
and this is what George Bush did when Elder Bush, Clarence Thomas, but then you get to the Chief Justice, John Roberts, who's a young man, Alito, is it Alito?
Yep.
Yeah, Alioto, who's a younger person.
Alito.
Okay, then what do you call it? Put in Kagan and Sotomayor. Obama did, who were younger people. So the key is there. But what Trump did at the beginning was, during the campaign, he asked.
But he gave us a list.
He asked the Federalist Society, of a group of conservative lawyers, and another group to give them proposal lists.
Now,
that he
I'm
took
getting
from
a
it.
kick out of the whole debate about who would Trump pick.
Yes.
He could skew, wait a minute, if he stays to what he has said, and I mean realistically, whether you like it or not, so far he seems to be following his playbook. He gave us a list and said, I'm going to pick somebody from this list.
Yeah.
What do you think of the list?
Oh, stellar. Yeah. First class.
Too far to the right?
No,
Too far to
no,
the
but
center?
these are conservative judges. They're in the mix. But when the society brought it forward, the Federal Society is a group of conservative lawyers, but they're not radicals. Okay, I mean, Trump's got a little experience in
Did you
this.
see anybody on that list that you'd consider far right?
No, but I just want to say
But
something.
I think that was intentionally done.
Yeah, but Trump's oldest sister's a senior sitting federal judge, so I think he might have a little knowledge of what the court system would be. But again, has anyone ever asked whether Obama's selections were extreme? No. So.
No, but I think Obama's selection was a prayer. Because if he had really, I mean, let's face it, the Republicans did to the Democrats what the Democrats borked the
yes.
Republicans.
But again, that's a moment in time. That's
I
been already
didn't see
forgotten.
the
It was tit for tat.
nominee being, I mean, I thought if Hillary won, I didn't know that nominee would stick.
No, it wouldn't even stay.
That it wouldn't move very further left.
Yeah.
Well, you'd go wherever. Yeah.
But I definitely think what you've seen, and you kept saying the word, and you said it about 6 times, the practical Trump. And I think you're starting to see that with the way that he's doing, some of his appointments, and some of the lists that he's released for possible candidates for things. I think that the thought of sitting in that chair and having that briefcase that can do what it does, I think it sobers a lot of people up, and I think he is going to be more practical in the way he acts. I think you're forced to. I think that the pressure's on you, and I think the people around you will force you down that street. I think he's still going to waver from now on. He's going to divert left and right.
Trump's still going to be Trump.
He's going to be Trump.
That's what they elected
I
him
think
for.
exactly, and I don't think it's going to be
Well, I'll give him credit. I love the idea that he came right out and said, I want to institute a lifelong ban on senior cabinet members representing foreign governments. I want a 5-year ban.
Gee,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like, I hate to say it, I think
Well-
the technical term is duh.
I know,
but again-
nobody else wants to do
again,
that.
again, look at, we don't understand in this part of the country, because we're in a la-la land in many senses, we don't understand the impact that NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, had on a lot of the country. How
was
they
very
got-
controversial
how
at
they
the
got
time, how
screwed,
we got- yeah.
how a lot of the middle of the country has gotten screwed by it, and that's the way to say it. How thousands of jobs have been lost because this was an elitist sort of view.
Again, except for the technical, theoretical, when I look at NAFTA, I wonder what benefit did it bring America?
But again, but this is precisely what Trump's talking about, that the people who leave the cabinet and leave the elite federal jobs immediately become lobbyists for other governments, in a sense working against us. And the clearest example of this is the disgust people have with Obama's foreign policy. And Trump fed right into that. The Iran nuclear deal,
Yep.
John Forbes Kerry should be ashamed of himself for that one. Okay, basically, how much do we give to the Iranian government? Billions of dollars.
No. Billions you could tolerate.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Of billions.
Yeah, and for us to turn a
and
blind eye.
what percentage of that is going to go into the war of terrorism against us? Then you look at, the public looked at what's happened in Europe with the refugee crisis and how whole European countries are being disrupted.
Syria.
And you look at the whole, people can say, I guess, we had how many years when Obama was blaming George Bush? I guess we're going to start blaming Barack Obama for Syria.
Ed, I hope we're over that because
Al,
I'm sorry,
Al.
blaming George W. Bush for everything. I mean, I heard it in the campaign. It's like, guys, that was almost a decade ago.
I know, but you still heard it.
Al, but
I hope that
they have nothing. What
No,
do
but I
you
hope that Trump doesn't rely on blaming Obama.
It is.
Because if anything, one of the things I've liked about him is he just said, "This is my opinion."
Well, where did you see? Let's go to another one. When George Bush was leaving, when Barack Obama was running against, who was the first one? John McCain.
Yeah.
Did you see George W. Bush come out and say the remarks about Barack Obama?
That was actually, I was embarrassing to have a standing president.
Now, who was the standing president? Barack Obama.
Right.
Let's
Just
just
have a standing president
and his wife
get up
Yeah.
and say the things he did, because what can bite you in the backside is that if Trump wins, then you turn around and say, okay,
Yep.
guess what?
We're having coffee to introduce you to the Oval Office, and I got to sit there and look at you after the
But
things
again,
I said about you.
Right.
Apparently, it's perfectly right, according to the media, to change the roles and do whatever.
No
But
question.
now, the thing I get a kick out of is I heard it today, and it must have been or yesterday on Fox, where they talk about the president who lived by the pen and whose legacy could die by the eraser. Because you start saying, okay, right, wrong, or indifferent, Obama really did go around Congress on a lot of issues. So now,
He did, but the other thing that he did was, and you have to give the Democrats their medal for bravery. He had, despite what the words you hear from Pelosi and Reid, he had virtually no contact with the Democratic members of Congress. So his regime has been very interesting. It's almost Nixonian in the sense of having a small group of advisors who you work with. And in his case, it was his wife and what's her name?
but it was very much Richard Milhouse. It was a tiny group
Yep.
that the worse it became, the tighter the circle.
But again, he didn't even, after Obamacare passed, or whatever you want to call it, he didn't seem to reach out in any way to make any, even with his Democratic people, even though they were.
But Obamacare was congressional action.
Yeah, but that
Trump
was his
can't
last.
just walk in
No,
and
but that
say,
was his last congressional real action. Since then, it's been by executive order. But how are we in the time? So
But executive order, Trump has an eraser.
yes.
Of course he does.
So
You know,
And I think he's going to flex it.
I hope it's,
one of the things we're really facing too is also one of the key things in the country. I mean, you can, as I said to you, you could talk about portfolios like education, you could talk about whatever, but a key other one is energy secretary and what our energy policy in the country is going to be with pipelines.
well, Trump's already said, day one, it's one of
Keystone.
his key points is he's going to open that up.
Yep. And but the thing is, even that in the market will have a profound effect on oil prices. And now they've I guess it was just announced there was one of the largest finds of oil and natural gas ever in South Texas. So it's interesting. One of the things I think we talked about a few shows ago is that we've moved. Remember we talked in the years when Carter was in, not necessarily about Carter. We were a net energy importer. Now we're the largest producer of energy in the world. We've basically up with Saudi Arabia. So that has changed our thing.
Well, it's
profoundly.
also, we're at $2 a gallon gas again.
Well,
Yeah.
Let's
For that
face
reason,
it,
yeah.
that's one of the main, you can say the economy's gone down, so China isn't using as much, but at the end of the day, our balance of production has affected that more
Yeah.
than anything.
Well, and
Now,
I mean, I
guys-
don't want to get into that
Yeah,
either
yeah.
because that's OPEC
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what
Charlie
they did that
Baker.
specifically
Yes.
and everything. So.
Black eye this election, I mean, 2 articles. I love Charlie, but did he take it on the chin on a couple articles?
Well, I think there's no question Baker is extremely popular governor for a lot of reasons. He's the anti-Deval Patrick.
But he is the most popular governor in the
One
country,
of, yes,
right?
one of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there's the 2 other Republicans are equally up there. But,
Okay. I'm
in a
prejudiced.
Democratic state, which
Yeah,
is
I was going to say, I'm
even
prejudiced.
makes it even
I think
more-
it's even more when he's
Yeah.
in a one-party state.
Yes.
no, there's no question.
Easier to be a popular
Well, the
Republican
question-
governor in Texas.
We could talk about the marijuana one, but that was one that I think its time had come with probably unintended consequences. But the charter school one's an interesting one because if Charlie Baker had wanted to play from the Democratic playbook, and I hate to say Democratic, I'd say the Democrat Party. That's what it is. Basically, when you say Democratic, people are
It's
sort of,
not our political
No.
institution. It's the party you're
yeah, I
talking
can tell you,
about.
democracy is our institution.
Right.
That's correct.
But if Charlie had wanted to play by the playbook the Democrats would have put in, he would have brought up the racial dimension of people's attitude in charter schools. Because the fact is that in inner city, in the state, in Boston and whatever, which are largely populated by minority people, there's great support for charter schools because they're an alternative to failing public schools.
But Ed, let me just pull it aside. Is it really a racial issue or is it socioeconomic?
No, I just said, but is it? I said, if Charlie wanted to play by their playbook.
So I'm saying, when I look at the inner city,
Yep,
black, white,
well,
Chicano, whatever you want to look at, to me it really is the poor that live there are suffering from
I
the worst schools.
agree with you, but I'm just trying to say to you that if Charlie had wanted to go down a road that would have been
Okay. If
very
he wanted
common,
to play the race card.
very common for Democrats to do, he could have. But I think the initiative was a miscalculation. He should have done this differently. He should have gone to the legislature and asked for a removal of the cap in communities above a certain population size. That could have been done legislatively. It would have handled the issue because there is a little room for growth in charter schools in the state, but not in Boston, for example. So that would have handled the need for the growth in the Springfield, Boston, Lower Lawrence, Haverhill, New Bedford, Fall River, legislatively, and I think the legislature would have been glad to pass it. Now, also, let's get back to one other thing. For the Mass Teachers Association to be pontificating about this is a disgrace because when charter schools first came out, when the idea of charter schools first came out, I believe Governor Weld and Sallucci were in, they denounced it because it was going to lead to racial segregation. Their opposition was overcome, and immediately in the schools, in the areas where these places opened, minority students rushed to them schools because of the failing public schools. And I have a good friend who works in Boston, and 2 or 3 of the women who work in his office are on the boards of charter schools in Boston. And their answer is very simple. I want my kids and grandkids to get an education, and they aren't getting it in the public schools. I want my son or daughter to go to school in a uniform, a dress code uniform every day, and I want a school that has a code of discipline that's enforced.
But again, when you say it's racial, is that only, in my mind, because the majority of kids in that area of
Oh, absolutely. I think that's what
they're
it's-
not,
yeah.
you know, in my mind, the affluent people in that area.
They go to private school.
Yeah, they're going to a charter
And I-
school on a
and-
different,
or a Catholic
and-
school.
and-
or same thing.
Yes.
And let's get beyond what the issue is, and I think we're arguing on whether just why it went the way it went. I think that the no on two. I think they had a good plan. They went after it. Their advertising, I think, whether it was true or not, I thought it was well done. It was out there. They put the fear of God into people, and once the people have the fear that their kid's education is going to be cut back
That's
on,
right.
you're not going to do it. You won't hear the other side, as Ed points out, how good charter schools are for the inner cities. You don't hear that anymore, and that's why I think the people who ran the No on 2 campaign did a very good job of putting the fear into people, and I think that's why you saw the result that you saw.
Yeah, and I think the ballot question itself was overkill. If I didn't get that public at the beginning, I think the people who wanted to put it in for whatever reason spent a lot of money. They could have gone to the legislature and said, by the way, let's develop this thing so that in cities or communities of a certain size, we're adding some schools. That would have handled the suburban concerns that we all had.
And I'm just curious,
agree.
how many charter schools are around in Milford?
The only one around is the Ben Franklin
And one in Marlboro and whatever.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But
Yeah.
they are where they're needed. So I'd say,
You know, the biggest concern was out in the suburbs, yet I sit there and say, does it really affect us?
but again, the argument didn't. In commercials, you never get the real argument.
Yes, that's my.
Well, let's shift. Marijuana.
Well, again, that's.
The part I don't understand, whether I agree with it or not, the vote was clear.
Well, it was close, wasn't it?
It was close, but it
It was
was
fairly close, but even
it was clear.
and around the
it's a-
country as well. It's
So
something
now,
that's turning.
do we have the right to try and delay the implementation?
Well, we have the public. I think the Attorney General and the Department of Public Health would have legitimate concerns about if they have legitimate concerns about cigarettes, they should have legitimate concerns about marijuana because tar, nicotine, and so on is
Yeah,
health
but
thing.
there's edibles and that type of stuff. You do
but,
not have to smoke it. And
well,
this
yeah,
is one
but
of the things that I always have a problem with. And it's not Democratic or Republican. When you put a question to the state and you ask the members of that state, what do you want? And then you immediately go against it. I have a fundamental problem with
here's
that.
the
Then
problem I
don't
have.
ask me. If you don't care and you don't want my opinion, don't ask me.
I did not vote to make marijuana legal. I think it was not well thought out
Yeah,
enough. But the fact is, enough people said yes.
Yep.
Like you say, the public has spoken. Go deal with it.
No, but
Yeah.
the thing is this, though.
just
that
get it done the right
it's
way.
a little, that's the question. But you see, now we have draconian laws in place about driving under the
influence.
influence of alcohol in Massachusetts. If you're a first-time offender in Massachusetts, this is something that I've been on the warpath about. You have a per se ruling where basically if you did this 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, that's still counted as whatever. And when you're charged with that, you're faced with, unless you plead guilty, draconian bills. The registry can take your license for a certain period of time if you refuse the breathalyzer and so on. Okay, now what do we do with driving while impaired under drugs? What kind of tests are we going to do for it? That's the question about. I totally agree with you when you say about well thought out, or whatever. But when the public votes, but the proof's in the pudding about how this law is going to affect the public. And it's not as simple as sitting at home and relaxing. There's social consequences involved where people are out driving, where they're interacting or whatever.
No question. And I think that's why they put 2018 as the first
Yes,
possible.
yes.
You've got a year.
time.
I mean, I guess my problem is you've got a year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the thing that beyond the when people talk about pot and whatever, you get a certain image of from my age, down. And honestly, that was the first growth of it was in the 60s and 70s is the whole idea of now the medicinal prospects and for people in pain and whatever. And it's a whole more subtle issue, and even the industry
So
itself.
let me get back. Did Charlie Baker really take a black eye?
Well, temporary, but I
don't
think I.
See, I'll disagree with you. I don't think most people really look at Governor Baker any less today.
No.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
Maybe the
Everybody's make-
teachers union might, but they
Yeah.
really never had a pretty great view of him anyway.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, they were his big supporter.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, so,
I-
you know,
he's
it's like...
But he
complete-
did it after he did it the stand-up, ethical way.
Yes.
He said what he was for and against, and that
I
was
had
it.
no problem
Yeah,
whether
he
I
wasn't out there
agreed with him or
stomping
not.
for
He got up
anything.
and said,
Well,
here's my
he
opinion.
was stumpy, but he
Well,
said
it
it in the right way. He got up. He
So
got
I
up.
don't think he took that bad of a hit.
No.
Well, I think he again that's the least of his
And
issues.
popularity helps.
Yeah. And the fact is, people if someone who you like has a different political view or whatever, that's
But see, that gets back to the likability. You know, when
Yes.
you came and you started off saying, people just didn't like Hillary to begin with.
Yeah.
A lot of people voted for her because they didn't like Trump more. But Charlie, Karen, I mean, she's come to Milford. You like her.
yeah, but they're
Absolutely, there's no
regular people.
Yes.
They're people we identify with in a way. The story of their families, the story of
She's
their
a kid
views.
from Shrewsbury,
Yes.
just like a
And they're-
kid
and
from
they're,
Milford.
You know, and
you
selectmen
feel,
and local,
Yeah.
they're in local government and everything
Yeah.
else.
you
And
know, and will she make a mistake? Will he make a mistake? Yeah. Okay, we all do.
But when
But you like them.
there's no question. And that goes a long way. It
And
really
their ability
does.
to work with the legislature is very
Yeah.
important. And that was one that, believe it or not, Deval Patrick, as a Democrat governor, didn't really have. What are other issues we want to?
Well, actually, we're going to get into trouble today because we're going to run out of time.
Ah.
Because, the next show will be a good.
How much do we have?
Oh, about 40 seconds.
So I think again it was a year where maybe next time we could talk about the local rep
I was going to
race
say, I'd
Yeah.
like to
and
talk
the
about
selectmen's race, maybe, and all that
what's
stuff.
coming up because
Yeah.
we've got a double selectmen's race.
Yep.
That's fine.
You know, and I laughed because I was joking with the selectmen saying, in April, Will Kincaid could be the senior sitting selectman of the three. Because if Bill Buckley doesn't carry, and I think he will, you know, he's done a good job and people seem to like him.
Yep.
But technically,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this could be a major shift.
But to get back to the whole general thing is, if you took at the beginning, if anyone ever predicted the way this was going to turn out from our shows a year and a half ago,
No.
as I say, holy cow,
Absolutely
we
not.
have no
There's no
idea
question.
what turned out. But
We're sitting there at 9 o'clock in front of the TV, and you know, I'm kind of a loser. I watched election night coverage anyway, but I'm sitting there at the end of my couch like this, like it was like an exciting movie. And whether you liked it, the result either way, it was exciting.
And we'll end tonight's show. To summarize, Uncle Ed started saying, holy cow.
yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a ride. Stay tuned, stay vigilant. Let's hope that our faith in the American process will guide our new president the right way. Because just like before, whether you voted for the president or not, he's now our president. We have to hope he succeeds because that'll make all of us successful. So as always, good night. May God bless. And may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank
Amen.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Far too long since I've been home. Been running all my life